We gather today to give thanks to God and to ask the blessing of God on the family and friends of RL, Brian, and Alexandria, and all the students who have been hurt and injured and wounded by this, not only those who have been unfortunately shot, but all those who have been affected in one way or another. And we know that Ariel, Brian, and Alexandria have been taken into God's arms and they are resting at peace in God's love and joy and peace. And we ask that God would give us a piece of that God would give us an experience in part of what they know fully. And we pray for their families, and our hearts break for them, and we pray for everybody who stepped in to try to help or try to serve in some ways, for the first responders, for the police officers, for everybody that converged on that space to make it safe again. And today I want to lift up two thoughts for you today as a way of thinking through what has happened. And the first is to have you do a little exercise with me. And it's something that I learned a few years ago when I was traveling in South Africa and doing some study of trauma. This exercise I learned from Ankie Krok, who is a famous poet and journalist who wrote the definitive book on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. And Ankie has a way of teaching us about trauma, and it's not just the trauma that you would feel immediately in the face of the event, but also the way trauma spreads throughout a community and throughout a country. And so I want you to take one of the Kleenex and tissue that you have that's on the edge of the pews. There's one on your right and one on your left. We've placed those. And I want you to grab them and hold them and take out one. And I want you to look and see that if you move it on the end, you can actually see two sheaves of paper right next to each other. And if you can, just touch it with your fingers and note how they can slightly open and create an opening. And then I want you to take a pencil that's been provided that's right on the sides. It's right next to you on the other side. And then I want you to poke a hole through that Kleenex. Like that. And then I want you to go back to that little dividing spot you saw in the Kleenex. And I want you to separate it. Just gently, try not to tear what's there until you have to. Now, what these Kleenex represent is they represent our bodies and our souls. And the hole that is pushed through the middle, that represents trauma. And what happens in trauma is that it affects both the body and the soul. Trauma is something that has many definitions, but one of the definitions that I like is that trauma is a wound that happens to you and you have no ability to put words around it, either because You don't have a community that is able to process the trauma with you, or empathetic faces that can say to you, you're hurt, or you've experienced something so deep that you cannot in any way express it. You don't have the words to say what happened. And what Kroc says is that trauma affects both the body and the soul. These two are normally always together. Think about all the ways you've picked up a tissue or a Kleenex and didn't realize that was actually two pieces of paper neatly connected to each other. And that goes the same for our bodies and our souls when it happens with trauma. When trauma pierces both layers of us, sometimes the body will heal and the hole will disappear, but there'll still be a hole in the soul. And we can define that soul in different ways. It can be defined as the psyche, or it could be defined as the Spirit of God within you. In either way, we're talking about that immaterial part of our identity. And the tragedy of life is so many of us experience that puncture of the soul, and we don't take time to heal it. I believe this image is really important for two reasons. I believe that the generation that is coming up has experienced that trauma to body and soul. And one of the things that we have to do better as people of faith, as people in the world, is to be more aware of that. There are people at Michigan State who survived Sandy Hook, where a cousin of mine was a little girl. And there are people at Michigan State who came from Oxford, and so they have experienced incredible trauma again and again and again. And even if you haven't been part or near a mass shooting, which is most of us, thank God, this trauma to the soul is going to continue to affect us. It affects not only the people who are there immediately or who are physically harmed, but all of us have been stricken and wounded by what happened on Monday. Some of us have been triggered, and past traumas have come to life. Some of us have been brought back to a place where we feel alone and small and without defense. So the goal that we have to deal with right now as a community and as a nation is to deal with that trauma to the soul. And my hope is that we find a way forward to keep these two sheaves together and also to gradually heal those wounds. And the second thing I want you to see in this analogy is that when someone experiences a trauma in their lives, it makes them susceptible to not only triggering, but it also makes them able to experience empathy. The more we come to grips with our own traumas, the more we can empathize with somebody else who has experienced trauma. And if there is a silver lining, and I'm not sure there is, to what happened on Monday, is that more of us are becoming aware of that trauma. And I think, although I know there are many people who are advocating for change, I think the most courageous thing that we can do as a Christian community is be the people who name that trauma and seek to address it. Because that trauma is a form of grief, and grief is one of those things that brings communities together. And that might be the most powerful and courageous thing we could do, is simply mark the fact that our hearts have been broken and that we have been wounded too. Because it's out of that collective acknowledgement of trauma that the deepest level of social change will happen. There is one thing in this that I want to say that's going to connect to what I'm trying to say. Again, the second thing I'd like to bring before you, which is that trauma is, as I've said, a failure of words. It's the inability for us to put words around what has happened. And one of the things that churches can do, along with therapists and others, is to help people name and speak and find words for that trauma. Sometimes the most beautiful thing we can experience or say in those moments when someone is finding their voice is simply to name the difficulty of trying to speak it out. And that is why I find this reading from the letter of Paul to the Romans so incredibly powerful, because Paul gives space and honor to that search for words. Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know how to pray as we ought, but that very Spirit intercedes with groanings too deep for words. And God, who searches hearts, knows what is the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. The Spirit intercedes with groanings too deep for words. This is to say that the Spirit of God is with us in those moments in which we cannot name or speak about our trauma. In fact, there is a kind of powerful thought in all of this, that the Spirit of God actually knows trauma and is part of the healing process with us. So today, let us find those words and be brave in that journey. There are two ways in which people find words or go to places where there are no words, as we often hear. One is to deny what has happened and to keep mum in one way or another. And the other is to enter into that space beyond words where the Spirit is today. May God give us grace to name our traumas, to be gentle with each other, as we all have experienced this trauma of the soul, and to bring our souls and body back together.